Two to you, it's now 12 to 8, and it's a very good morning to the Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, Matthew Dickerson. G'day.
Good morning, Ian. Good to see you again.
Oh, pleasure to have you in the studio once again.
Thank you.
Now, this is interesting. A workshop last night involving the Duke of Wellington Bridge, is that correct?
This is hot off the press, Ian.
Is this a scoop for moi?
Scoop for Ian, 302 to you. You've got it.
Right.
We have been talking about to the community about the Duke of Wellington Bridge. Now, for people around the Wellington area, they know that very well, but maybe Dubbo people not so much. That's the low-level bridge that's to the west of the normal bridge you'd go over if you were going down to Sydney, the normal Mitchell Highway Bridge. Mm-hmm. And you'll remember many years ago when the old bridge was knocked down, that bridge was built as more or less a temporary crossing while the main bridge was reconstructed.
That was a pontoon back then, wasn't it?
It was a pontoon bridge put in by the Army, I think from memory came in, and then there was a low-level bridge because that was quicker to construct that before the main bridge was reconstructed. So for some time there, you'd go to Wellington, you'd have to turn off through Montefiores and then go down across this low-level bridge. So that's all been fine, that's been operational, and then with the last flooding events at the end of 2022, there was some severe erosion that occurred where a lot of the riverbank that goes down to feed that bridge was chewed away, and so you can't actually get to that bridge now. You can drive down that road and there's a gap, so you can't kind of drive onto that bridge. And so we've been doing some work. The first thing we had to do was check the structural integrity of the bridge itself. So before we did any work around getting the riverbanks back in the place where you could actually drive onto that bridge, we need to make sure that bridge hadn't been damaged, because there was no point basically if the bridge had been damaged to do any further. We'd have to do some other severe work. So we've had a report now, and that was the workshop last night. Obviously no decisions at a workshop, it's really a discussion about where we go forward from there. But the initial information that came back from a company called SMEC, which is the engineering company, basically said the bridge is in good condition. The bridge doesn't appear to be damaged. The bridge was built in a river. It was built to withstand the flow of river, so that's all okay. Then they gave some more recommendations in that report on what we might need to do around the area.
To do with obviously the approaches to get on it, really. Any sort of costings around this?
Yeah, make sure you're sitting down. You've got a few options there. We could do nothing and leave the bridge there and leave the approaches as they are and let the water keep chewing away at that riverbank slowly, but it would keep eating into that riverbank because it's a big corner and the Bell River flows down into the Macquarie at that corner. It's the confluence of the Bell and the Macquarie. So we could do nothing, and that might cost us $50,000 just to tidy up a few areas there. But there's three options where we could remove the bridge altogether, we could leave the bridge there but just make sure the riverbank wasn't going to keep eroding, or put the bridge back so that we've fixed up the riverbank and then fixed up the approaches. And all three are similar in cost because all three involve stopping further erosion of that riverbank. Now there's so much erosion, it's one of those things that it's gone so far now, you've got to build it back up before you can then put some sort of protection in place. And the cost of those is in the vicinity of $22 to $23 million in the initial inspection. So that's a lot of money, and council doesn't have that kind of money. So we're going to now look at some other processes to try and get some of that money.
Can councils insure their infrastructure against these sorts of acts of nature? Does that happen?
No, we have normal insurances,
Yeah, that's right.
Car insurance, for example, you have, and someone has a crash, there's insurance on that. But this type of thing, I don't know any insurance company that will insure a riverbank, for example. And we do have disaster recovery funding options with the state government. So when you do have a disaster, when you get infrastructure, essential infrastructure damage, recreational infrastructure has a limit of $1 million, but other infrastructure should be covered, but it's not a guarantee. And again, no decision of council last night. It was a workshop, it was a discussion. There'll be a report that will come through to council where councils will make a decision about which way to go. Again, at this point in time, to me, it makes sense to go for disaster recovery funding to try and get that built back up. But that's a lot of money, and even though it's not going to be council money, it's still public money. So it seems like a large chunk of money.
I can't point the finger at you because you weren't in council at the time. I was doing a bit of a read up on this bridge with what's happened over the, since the floods and stuff like that. There was a report done in 2018 which recommended works be done on it then. Okay, so that would have ended up probably being a little bit cheaper if they'd have done preventative works and stuff like that. What do you say about that?
That report, certainly, there was a report that was given to council. It was a fairly comprehensive report that had a whole range of areas down the river that needed some work done. There was another one there, if you remember, at the Tamworth Street Bridge area where we've now changed the Tracker-Riley path. That was another area that was recommended in that report to have some works done. And obviously it's the old saying, and prevention is better than cure. So having to do some works there to stop that erosion, that further erosion, would have been better then, there's no doubt about it, because obviously the first thing we're going to have to do now is fill in all that area there to get back out to almost the point where it was, and then put some, you put some gabions in there, for example, or a gabion wall, or you might put some sort of reinforcement there and some rocks on there. You can do all that if the riverbank's already there, but we'll have to build out that riverbank. The perfect time to have done this work would have been back in 2019 when we had a severe drought, and obviously you want to do work in a river when there's as little water as possible in the river, so that would have been the time, because you'll effectively have to dam up the river to a certain extent to then do the construction work. And I remember when we did some work on the weir in Dubbo, the South Dubbo weir, I remember there was a little dam built around that, and I actually walked down to the face of the weir where you'd normally be well and truly underwater, and looked at the face of the weir or the bottom of the weir there as they're doing the construction works there. So that's what you have to do. That's easier when the river is low flow. That didn't happen. That's, excuse the pun, water under the bridge now. And so now we're going to have to deal with the situation as it stands.
Okay, also too, council is seeking community input on the potential introduction of a new tree preservation order on private property. I don't know that I'd particularly like the council rifling through my bushes.
Well, this is the thing, we want the feedback from the community. There's some people who are very focused on this.
Yeah.
This is a tree preservation order. We've got one now, but some people say it's not strong enough, it doesn't go far enough. The tree preservation order now talks about a significant tree register. If you've got a tree you think significant, you can get it registered on there, and then it's protected. But there are some tree preservation orders that say, for example, if a tree is over a certain height, you can't touch it without permission. This is on your property, don't forget, on your block of land. If the tree is over a certain thickness, for example, you may not be able to touch it. So just to give a random example, you might have, if there was a tree preservation order that said any tree over 4 meters in height, if you want to lop it, cut it down, change it, do whatever to it, you'd have to get permission from council, and there'd probably be some fee associated with that because there'd be some administration from council. We really want the feedback from the community, because again, some people are saying you definitely should have this, other people are saying, like you, leave my block alone, this is my little area, that is my little spot that I can do whatever I want in. So we really want the feedback from the community. That feedback is out there now, that option to give feedback is out there now.
It's at yoursay.dubbo.nsw.gov.au. The question is, it says, if a tree preservation order was to be put in place on your private land, please indicate which levels of intervention you prefer. And it is based on height. Okay, so as of last night, the first option is 3 metres, 22% there. 6 metres is the next option, no support there yet. 8 metres is the next one. 10 metres, nil. 15 metres, 22% on there. And not in favour of a tree preservation order for private land. 56% so far have ticked that one.
Now that's interesting. Normally when you're doing a survey, you don't show people the results of the survey as you're going through the survey, because that can sometimes influence the process. So I might have a word to our staff about that one and see whether that's the right way to go about it.
There is something unusual about that based on the point system. I think you should look at that too. I don't quite understand. It says you have a bucket of 5 points to spend, and that's, I don't know whether you can weight certain things in a certain way, but that's how it's set up there. But anyway, but it is there at yoursay.dubbo.nsw.gov.au.
And as you can imagine, I haven't done the survey myself because I don't like to try and influence council decisions until it comes to council, but I'll go and have a look at that now. Thank you for that.
Just quickly, I noticed it fenced off there when I was driving along Bligh Street. The amenity block at Ollie Robbins Oval there, just behind Dubbo Square, not available at the moment. There works with the Legacy Shared Parkway.
That'll start next week, so the middle of next week we should have some construction occurring down there, which is exciting. This is a project that's been going for some time, and the state government money, about $3 million roughly, is being used for that particular project. So exciting project, but yes, you're right, those toilets there will be out of action for several months actually.
Now, very, very quickly, a print media report, parking fines up as Dubbo Council rakes in $500,000 over the past year. Maybe it's up because of COVID, things were a bit quieter there. No difference with the rangers, the same number, they're doing the same thing?
We've got rangers out there. Basically, if you don't park in the wrong spot or you don't park for too long, you won't get a fine. But there are fines out there, and obviously there's more activity in the CBD. I suggest because that more activity is where that number has gone up from.
Matthew Dickerson, Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, as always. Thank you for coming in. We'll catch up again next week.
Thanks, Iain.
2 to you. It's now coming up to 2 minutes to 8. We have the latest in news, sport and weather just for you at 8 o'clock.